מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא אכסר, בנוד שירביצני, על ימי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך וגצל מוות, לא ידע רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד שורדיי. דשענת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושאבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The words of the 23rd Psalm, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So we are all gathered here this afternoon to say goodbye to Dr. Norman Goldberg of blessed memory. He was also known to the Jewish people by his Hebrew name, Nahum ben David Yocheved, Zichrono Livracha. He was the son of David and Evelyn Goldberg of blessed memory, beloved husband of Marilyn for some 53 years, the brother of Penny Goldberg and Harvey Goldberg and Ruth Kahane, the father of Aviva Goldberg and Greg DeGresh, Amy Goldberg and Dan Poxon, and Daniel Goldberg and Hilary Baum, the grandfather of Sam, Isaac, Abby, and Caleb. Dr. Norman Goldberg passed away on Saturday, January 4th, at the age of 76. So we are gathered here today to pay tribute to a man whose life was a beacon of love, wisdom, and dedication. The Torah teaches us the soul of man is the lamp of the Lord. Dr. Goldberg's soul was a radiant light, illuminating the lives of countless individuals in his family, community, and professional life. As a beloved pediatrician in Winnipeg, he dedicated his entire career to healing and comforting children and their families. He had a remarkable ability to connect with his young patients. For example, back in the day, doctors used to wear the classic coat. But in Norman's case, if a child was too afraid or too anxious to speak to him, he would remove his coat, get down to their level, and speak to them with kindness and respect. In more than one occasion, parents were in awe of how their children, otherwise terrified of doctors, would open up to Dr. Goldberg. This humility, so deeply rooted in his character, embodies the teaching of Pirkei Avot: be humble before every person. Dr. Norman Goldberg was a man of immense accomplishments, earning numerous awards and honors throughout his career. Yet, he never sought recognition for himself. Instead, he found fulfillment in the trust and gratitude of the families he served. Our tradition holds physician in the highest regard. As the Talmud teaches, whoever saves a life, it is, and if they have saved an entire world. Dr. Norman Goldberg embodied this sacred responsibility, saving and nurturing countless worlds throughout his work. He also extended his care beyond the clinic. For example, helping to fundraise for the opening of the Ronald McDonald House in Winnipeg, ensuring that families in need could find shelter and comfort during trying times. Beyond his professional life, Norman was a devoted family man. His family was his greatest joy, and he celebrated their achievements and milestones with boundless pride. He supported his children's decisions with unwavering encouragement and welcomed their partners into the family with warmth and kindness, ensuring everyone felt at home in his presence. Dr. Goldberg's love for his family extended into their shared Jewish heritage. He celebrated his son Daniel's bar mitzvah at Masada in Israel, and his daughters Aviva and Amy's bat mitzvahs in Winnipeg, creating beautiful memories that will forever remain in their hearts. A lifelong learner, Norman took many Melton courses on Jewish topics and found profound meaning in synagogue life. He regularly attended Shabbat services at Shaarey Zedek, and he even brought Marilyn closer to the richness of the Jewish traditions. Shabbat dinners and holiday celebrations were central to his family life, reflecting his deep connection to Judaism. Norman's personality was multidimensional. He had a quiet yet sharp sense of humor, often delivering subtle jokes at unexpected moments. He loved baseball, trivia, and Scrabble, playing with his children from a young age without ever giving them an advantage, teaching them the importance of perseverance and learning. He also had a love for water, enjoying lakes, swimming, and everything aquatic. He took pleasure in rodeos in Morden and cherished his time in Denver, where he developed a fondness for hats, from cowboy hats to Indiana Jones-style hats. In his professional and personal life, Norman embodied the values of friendship, responsibility, and integrity. He taught these values to his children by example, instilling in them a strong work ethic and a deep respect for others. Even after retiring twice, his passion for medicine remained. After his first retirement, when he expressed a desire to return to the Manitoba Clinic, he was welcomed back with open arms, a testament to the respect and admiration he earned throughout his career. Dr. Goldberg's legacy extends far beyond his family and profession. He was a trusted physician, a loving family man, and a pillar of his community. He grew up in West Kildonan in a traditional Jewish home, celebrating all the holidays and attending Rosh Pina Synagogue. He was a brilliant student, excelling academically, and even played trumpet in his school's marching band. Though he often joked about being more a nerd than an athlete, his brilliance and dedication foreshadowed his success as a pediatrician. As we say goodbye to Dr. Norman Goldberg, we take comfort in the words of Ecclesiastes. The dust returned to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. His soul has returned to its creator, but his light and love remain with us. His legacy is not only the remarkable family he nurtured, but also the countless children and families whose lives he touched with his care, compassion, and humor. May the memory of Dr. Norman Goldberg inspire us to live with great love, faith, and dedication to the sacred work of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing. Amen. And to continue the process of eulogizing Dr. Norman Goldberg, I would like to invite first his children, Aviva, Amy, Daniel, to come to the microphone to eulogize their dad.
Amy, Daniel, and I want to tell you about our dad, Norman. You've already heard from Rabbi Mas about his remarkable life and career, and copies of his CV are available on request. But we want to tell you a bit more about the person we were privileged to call Daddy. He was a kind, gentle, humble, and fiercely intelligent person who trusted people and who earned their trust. He had a gentle humor and welcoming spirit that extended to his family, his patients and colleagues, and the wider community. He was, as our Zadie Max called him, a Gitan Neshuma, a good soul.
Norman was born in Winnipeg and raised here. And except for a few years in Denver where he did his fellowship training, he lived here his whole life. His parents, Dave and Evelyn, raised him, Harvey and Penny on Burn Avenue in the North End, in a home where they modeled hard work, intelligence, and commitment to the community. He went to West Kildonan Collegiate, where he was a trumpet player in the marching band and a reach for the top champion. He loved his brother and sister, and though they did not live in the same city as adults, they stayed connected to each other through visits, phone calls, and shared memories. He loved his parents and took such good care of his mother, our Bubby Evelyn, when she got older. He met my mom in high school, but at the time they did not get along. My mom said they were both nerds, but they were a different kind of nerds, and hated it when people pointed out that they had the same last name. Our dad had a number of jobs during high school and college. He worked at the Marlborough Hotel, though he was fired for trying to organize a labor union. As a Dickie D salesman whose wares melted into a fudgy puddle on his first day on the bike. And in the kitchen of the CNR trains for several summers, traveling from Vancouver to Montreal and back again. His job was to wash dishes, and when they were too far gone, his boss would toss the pans out the window. The prairies of Saskatchewan are littered to this day with cast iron that was past its saving, but my dad loved seeing the country in this way and meeting people from all over the world, especially during the summer of 1967 at the Montreal World's Fair. My dad became the first in his family to go to university at the University of Manitoba, where we all attended, where thanks to a yellow miniskirt that my mom Marilyn wore, one day he rekindled his friendship and interest in the other Goldberg nerd. He was shy to ask her out, but when she developed appendicitis in the second week of law school, he pounced, bringing her a bouquet of sunflowers in the hospital and asking her out to a Gordon Lightfoot concert. This begun a 53-year war romance that would give them children, grandchildren, friends, and careers through successes and challenges, good times traveling and good times at home. My mother and father were successful professionals in the 80s. We all hurried out of the house before 8 a.m., and after drop-offs, my mom made her way to the second floor at the law courts, looking out across the provincial legislature. My dad made his way to the clinic in the North End or the hospital for rounds, and then back downtown, only 300 meters away at the Mall Medical. Between all of us kids, our comings and goings to dance or lessons or BBYO or whatever, and all of their volunteer work and all of their evenings with friends. They were like ships passing sometimes, and they were only 300 meters apart most of the time. They could have waved across Memorial. My mother recalls my dad phoning her every day to check in. How are you? What's happening? How are things? He made sure my mother felt his presence even when they couldn't be together. He was always concerned for her happiness. They made each other happy. A love for the ages.
At one of our last Shabbat dinners, after Zedek gave the boys the blessing for the children, my mom went into the kitchen to get something, and Dad said to me, "I wish I could give Mom the Esher Chayil prayer, which is a prayer for a woman of valor." My mom liked the general sentiment, but didn't love parts of it because she thought it focused too much on the work that women do inside the home and didn't leave room for more modern feminism. But Daddy wanted her to know how much he truly loved her and appreciated everything that she did for him. So this one's from Daddy to our mommy. We want to give you a tiny piece of this prayer because we all, including him, are so grateful for everything you did. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She anticipates the needs of her household and the bread of idleness she does not eat. Her children rise and celebrate her, and her husband, he praises her. Many daughters have attained valor, but you have surpassed them all. You all know that our dad was a pediatrician, and that he was known for his intelligence and kindness. He was inspired to go into pediatrics by his own pediatrician, Dr. Shaarey Medvey, and by the death of his childhood friend Ian Dordick, who died too early from cancer. The stories could go on forever, and Mom has cautioned us to keep it brief. So for now, we're only going to share a few, but we look forward to hearing more of them at the Shiva. About a year ago, I was talking to my dad about a documentary I saw at a transplant conference about Thomas Starzl, a pioneering transplant surgeon who did the first liver transplants in the world in the early 1980s. My dad, in his usual dry way, said, "Oh yeah, I know Tom." I asked him what he meant, because again, he was a community pediatrician in Winnipeg, and Thomas Starzl was a world-famous transplant surgeon in Pittsburgh. He explained he was keeping up to date with the medical literature and read about these newfangled liver transplants. He had a patient with a liver disease who could potentially benefit, so he and Ray Postuma called Starzl from Winnipeg, got the kid down there, and he got a transplant, which my dad managed from the time the boy was 2 years old till he graduated from his practice. That was probably when he was like 25, because my dad would never followed the rules about graduating at 18. Anyway, Dad said he would occasionally call Pittsburgh or Toronto for some advice, but that it really wasn't that hard and really was just about monitoring the patient's medication levels. That was my dad, doing the most extraordinary things without fanfare, just because they needed to be done. Our dad volunteered throughout his life. He was one of the first adolescent pediatricians in Winnipeg and worked with Planned Parenthood to offer sex ed sessions in schools before that was a part of the curriculum. He was one of the founders of the Ronald McDonald House here in Winnipeg. He was on the board of the Society for Manitobans with Disabilities and the Canadian Pediatric Society. He served on the Manitoba Education Council on AIDS in the 80s, where he advocated for sensible, non-stigmatizing care for children affected by HIV and AIDS. He was recognized with the Dr. Leighton Young Award for Distinguished Work in Pediatrics in 2002. He was a leader, but he shone in quiet ways, in the ways that people didn't see. Our Uncle Frank told us a story just a few days ago that we had never heard. As young couples, he and Marilyn and Frank and Merce went to a movie at the town theater. The boys dropped the girls off and went to park, and my dad said to Frank, "Just wait a sec, one of my babies lives in that house and I need to check on them." He stayed for about 10 or 15 minutes while Frank waited outside, worrying that they'd miss the trailers. When he came out, Frank asked him what he was doing inside the house, and he said he was helping because the family needed help, that he got them food because they needed food. He did house calls long after it was standard, and there were even kids that came to our house to get him to look in their ears and throats and noses. Just the kids of friends, but newcomer families and others who knew that he was the person who could help them. He took a colleague and his son to Minnesota to seek treatment for a serious illness. He called in favors from his friends in medicine, but only in the service of his patients. That's what he did his whole life, helped because people needed helping without bragging or seeking acclaim. He did love the buckets of strawberries that some farming patients would bring him as thank yous, but beyond that, he was just happy to do the work. His friend Rick Adams remembered that when they were founding the Winnipeg Ronald McDonald House, quote, "I called him and told him what I was trying to do, that I needed his assistance and the input of the Manitoba Cancer Treatment and Research Foundation. I didn't have a way to make a connection with them. He said, 'Leave that to me.'" My dad gave me some advice on my first rotation in pediatrics. He said, "If you see a dirty diaper, change it." He explained that this meant that no matter how smart you are or how much you know, people will remember the way that you treated them and their children, and that if there is work to do, you are not above the dirty or menial parts of it. If there is a problem, you work to find a solution. One of his solutions, quite literally, was an amazing invention called Monster Spray. He would put some medicinal smelling liquid into a spray bottle, maybe mouthwash, and label it with a official-looking prescription label saying, "Monster Spray, use as needed under the bed," complete with his name, signature, and college number. So many parents said that the spray helped their kids with bedtime fears, and he prescribed it to Sam and Isaac too. He was the best Zadie to them, making his favorite scrambled eggs, coming to their games and concerts and shows, playing pranks on them with peach pits, and hosting them in Gimli.
Our dad was a proud member of the Jewish community. He and Mom hosted us for Jewish holidays, most recently Hanukkah, just on Wednesday. He even dressed up as Moshe one year for Pesach Seder. He served on the boards of both the Rosh Hashanah and Shared Zedek synagogues at different times, and was always reaching out to the larger community with a lens of Tikkun Olam, healing the world. He led the community's effort to sponsor and settle refugees from Darfur in Winnipeg, and he led the change in the cemetery so that interfaith couples could be buried together. He was a Judaism that united and never divided. His was a Judaism that was not orthodox in practice, but deeply rooted in Jewish values and tradition and belief. This rootedness led him to good deeds, good words, and a good life. Our dad was known for his fierce intellect and loved anything to do with words. When you watched Jeopardy with him, you could swear it was a rerun or on a tape. Because he knew all the answers. He loved crosswords and Scrabble. Like his mom, Evelyn, he loved reading, especially about history, and continued reading the pediatric journals long after he retired. Our dad loved water. He would take us fishing at Lockport, and though we never caught a fish, we would eat hot dogs at Skinner's, watch the river. We spent many hours together at the pool and later the lake, and he wanted to take us scuba diving in retirement. He loved the rodeo and loved going to the Morris Stampede, wearing his cowboy boots and belt. He loved animals and spoiled us with pets, dogs, fish, and a resilient hamster named Quimby. In these last months, he loved watching the squirrels outside the kitchen window and a cat with a bow tie mark on his fur who seemed to come to the yard specifically to visit him. My dad loved bow ties and hats, and I'm the only one with a head big enough to fit them, and accessories in general, so this cat was very special to him.
As children, our home was filled with books and music, and he would read to us. We remember Curious George and Winnie the Pooh, but our favorite was hearing him read Love You Forever to our brother Daniel. For a man with a big heart, he rarely cried, but he could not finish that book without crying. Most people know how the book ends, with the baby growing up and cradling the parent. And we're all at the end of the book now, and we understand why it made him cry. But we hope he felt the love that he showed us in the early pages come back to him at the end. And he loved us forever, and we'll do the same for him.
When we lived in Denver, I had a stuffed animal, Mrs. Mouse, who wore an apron and carried a wedge of cheese. One day we were crossing the street and I dropped her and Mrs. Mouse was hit by a car. I saw her roll down the sidewalk with her little piece of cheese falling off and rolling in the other direction. I was just a little girl at the time, 3 years old or something, and I was so sad. Our dad had a developmentally appropriate discussion with me about death and remembrance and told me that this world is about people and love and memory, and that love transcends our bodies and time. He said we could remember Mrs. Mouse even when we couldn't hug her anymore, and that we could go on living and having fun and loving each other even though she couldn't be with us anymore. He told me this over 40 years ago, and it's one of my first memories. But it's how I hope to live the rest of my life, remembering him even though I can no longer hug him. We, all three of us, are reflections of his very best characteristics, as are Sam and Isaac. I became a pediatrician like him, so that one's kind of obvious. Amy became a teacher for children with special needs and is, like Daddy, the strongest advocate. Daniel became a graphic designer and a comedian, and he has Dad's gentle, humble, and deep, deep well of kindness towards everyone. Dan looks so much like Dad that he's the only one who can carry off the hats, as he said, but strangers approach him and ask if he's related to Dr. Norman, and whenever he says yes, they regale him with stories of kids he took care of and the amazing man he was. We loved hearing those stories. His legacy will not be forgotten, as he will live on in our lives and in those of the children he cared for. We want to thank all the people who loved Dad, worked with him as a professional, and took care of him when he was ill. In our many encounters with the grown-up side of medicine in these last few years, we encountered a system that was not gentle, but one that has so many kind people working within it. Dad delighted in hearing about the families of the caregivers or sharing memories of his own with them. Specific thanks to Kate and to Manny, who treated Dad with such dignity and respect in these last few months. While our dad did not seek publicity for the things he did, we did find an article in the Free Press about the liver transplant from January 19th, 1981. In that article, written while they were still seeking approval for the transplant, my dad is quoted as saying, "We're waiting, we're optimistic, we have hope." My dad lived his life with optimism and inspired optimism in others. We promise we will do the same to honor his life and his amazing legacy.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Sam and Isaac to eulogize their grandfather.
Today, as his grandchildren, we want to tell you all about our Zedek and how much we love him and how much we miss him. You have seen and heard how wonderful he was. From the simple things like smiling to brighten someone's day, to the big things like saving people's lives. To us, he is our Zadie and will always be our Zadie. One thing we really enjoyed doing with him was watching sports. Whether it was in person at a Gold Eyes game in the summer, with fresh lemonade and hot dogs, or at the Gimli condo watching Blue Jays games on the couch after dinner. It was always a great time. I remember one time while watching my volleyball game, Bubby said, "Wow, Sam's really involved. He seems to be touching the ball almost every play." To this, Zadie replied, "Marilyn, he's the setter. That's his job." Discussing sports, either pro or personal, was a highlight of our visits with him. I know he was very proud of how much effort and passion we had for our sports, and I'm extremely grateful he was there when I made the Maccabee Games volleyball team and to see all of Isaac's success in hockey and soccer.
Now, Zadie didn't just like sports. He also loved playing jokes. Let me tell you about the Hamantashen heist. Something you need to understand is that every Purim, I, my brother, and Bubby make, in my opinion, the greatest Hamantashen in the world. But somehow, some way, when my brother and I went to get those tasty pastries, we always found one missing from the cookie sheet. This happened without a fail year after year. I know that now when I look at that Hamantashen tray, I'll miss seeing that stolen cookie. We are proud that Zadie kept up traditions of Judaism and taught them to us. We are proud that even when he was in the hardest times, he tried to make us smile and laugh and gave us hugs. We're going to miss playing games with him and his stories and going to Gimli together. We are going to miss having movie nights and giving him kisses on his forehead and just being with him at family dinners. We wish that our entire family passes on his legacy and remembers him. Zadie lived a long life with a lot of love in it. We love him forever. In 2021, Bubby and Zadie celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. We had dinner with them, and they shared stories and told us that Zadie's favorite flower was a sunflower. It was on the cake that day. The anniversary was such a huge milestone, and I know they were so happy to share their love and see the family that they built. Knowing this, let's celebrate his life. May his memory be a blessing, and may it shine as bright as a sunflower.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite everyone to rise for the memorial prayer, the El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem Bameroimim, Ametzei Menucha Nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה ומעלות קדושים, קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע המזהירים את נשמת נחום בן דוד ויוכבד שהלך לעולמו בעבור שאנו מתפללים ועד הזכרת נשמתו בגן עדן, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. לכם בלרחמים אז תראהו בסדר כנב לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים, החיים את נשמתו, אדוני ונחלתו, וינוח ושלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Dr. Norman Goldberg, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. Let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. In a few minutes, we're going to proceed in caravan fashion to the Shaarey Zedek cemetery for the burial. If you are coming with us to the cemetery, please remember to turn on your four-way flashers, and please remember to stop at all red lights and stop signs. Immediately after burial, we are returning here for the meal of consolation. The Shiva will be observed at the home of Marilyn Goldberg, 126 Bard Boulevard. The formal Shiva for the visit will start tomorrow. Tonight is going to be a private Shiva just for immediate family. So if you want to visit the house, remember, Wednesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., with the davening at 7:30 p.m. Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., with the davening at 1:30 p.m., and Sunday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., with the davening at 2:30 p.m. Everybody's invited to come, visit, and pay their respects. Donations on Dr. Goldberg's memory could be made to their fund on the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba, or it could also be to the Children's Hospital, or to the Ronald McDonald's House, or of course, to the charity of your choice. Now, we should move to the next stage. We should transition to the next stage, which is start going to the cemetery. So I would like to invite the pallbearers to exit the chapel. And please assume your places alongside the coffin. And I would like to invite the immediate family to also exit and to proceed directly to their transportations. And for the rest of us, please remain in your seats until the family exits. Thank you, everyone.